Jumbo, beautiful people, and welcome to Espresso Talk Today. This is a place where we have uncommon conversations about the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces, and we discuss how to curb, control, and calm that chaos. I'm your host, Ama Robin, and I'm having my turmeric coffee today for this informative and powerful show. Just so you know, I am a Black empowerment educator and a resilience coach. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that hits close to home for many of us: the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces. You see, many people have asked me, what do you mean by the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces? Well, I thought it was clear. Obviously, it's not. And today, I'm going to answer that question. Here's my trigger warning. On this show, we are going to be discussing some difficult situations, some that you may have experienced yourself. And this can bring about anxiety, stress, or feelings of trauma. If you begin to have these feelings, please practice self-care. Do what you need to do to take care of your mental health. These issues are important, but your health and your well-being are even more important. And during this show, we're going to take, 2 breather breaks. And I'll notify you so you won't miss it. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're feeling this show, share it with your fam, your crew, your circle, everyone in your community. Now, grab that espresso or tea. Tea drinkers are welcome here too. And close that door behind you. We're going to get deep and we're going to get real. And I hope that y'all are ready for this. Aquaba, my dear brothers and sisters, and my beloved gender-neutral and gender-nonconforming folks. We are back and we are ready to get started. So, what do I mean by the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces? There's a lot to unpack in that question, but I think the focus really is on the chaos. So what is chaos, and why do we, Black people that is, experience more chaos than others when we are in white spaces? Well, there's a big answer to that one too, but let's start with the basics. What is chaos? Well, looking at the dictionary, chaos is defined as a state of utter confusion or disorder. Wow, that just says a lot, doesn't it? And there's a lot beneath that. Let's think about that. There is the unpredictability. There's a lack of control. There's a lack of logic. There's fear. When you think of chaos, what do you envision? If you were to close your eyes and envision chaos, what do you see? And I see something like a tornado with things spinning around me out of control. But to give words to it, I think of that utter confusion and racism. And that's what we're talking about here. Racism creates a state of utter confusion or disorder. And it does it by perpetuating false narratives and stereotypes about certain racial groups, particularly Black people. And that leads to misunderstandings, division, conflict, anger, lies, all kinds of different things. Let's pull out that unpredictability, because that for me is a big one. Racism is, let me think. Racism is unpredictable. It's unpredictable in its manifestations and in its effects. It can appear as overt acts of discrimination, or it can appear as violence. It could also appear as really subtle forms of racism, such as microaggressions, institutional bias, and systemic inequalities, things you can't really put your finger on, but you know they're there. The chaos also appears as a lack of control. Racism deprives and takes away a sense of control that people really need. Particularly, it takes away that control from certain racial groups, we're talking about Black people here, over our lives and over our destinies. And in that way, it limits our opportunities, it limits our access to resources, and it limits our ability to fully participate in society without fear of discrimination or prejudice or violence or some of these other really terrible things. In a way, racism is predictably unpredictable. But maybe I'm taking it too far. Finally, let's look at that lack of logic and irrationality. There really is nothing logical about racism. It's based on unfounded beliefs in the superiority or the inferiority of certain groups. And despite scientific evidence to the contrary, people just don't care. People just don't see, or they don't care that that racism is not logical. It defies reason, and it perpetuates really harmful stereotypes that really have no basis in reality, yet people still hold on to that. And all of this builds up to a lot of the chaos that I'm talking about that Black people experience in white spaces. Okay, I paused there because I'm thinking, does this seem like it's just way out there or some made up, or this is a philosophical, hypothetical discussion? Or maybe you think this is just the work of a paranoid mind. Well, no, it's none of those things. And I always like that phrase, that they say, well, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that you're wrong. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Well, this chaos is real, and it's a regular part of living Black in white spaces. We're going to talk about white spaces later, and when people bring that up a lot too, this podcast, we're not going to cover it, but we will later. Let me make this more real for you. Picture this. You're the only Black person in a room full of white faces. Everyone is friendly, yet you feel like you're being watched, that your every move is being scrutinized. You laugh at the right times. You hold your knife and fork in the right hands. You moderate your voice. You don't drink too much, but you don't drink too little either. But your heart is racing. Your palms are a bit sweaty, and you're wondering if you fit in at all. You wonder if you really truly belong. And then you're noticing little things. The waiter serves you last and doesn't make eye contact. No one has offered to take your coat. You were asked to show your ID and wait until they found your name on the list before you were allowed to enter the room. You saw your colleagues just breeze into the room without a question, but you stood there and dug out your ID. You catch some people glancing at you. You are the only Black person in the room. This, my friends and my allies, is one example of the chaos of being Black in a predominantly white space. It is a relentless onslaught of hypervigilance, of microaggressions, of tokenism, of cultural appropriation, and it chips away at your sense of belonging, maybe even your sense of self-worth. And I can tell you, again, my friends and my allies, that this is a scenario that I have experienced, this exact scenario, more than once. But this is not the only example of chaos in white spaces. Whew. A lot to unpack there, and I think we're started here, but there's more to go. But let's take our first breather break, because this gives us a chance to breathe for a minute. When things start to get intense, I do like to breathe, and I hope that you do too. I'll see you in a minute, and I'm going to listen to this song. Y'all know that I love this song.
Turn me up in the headphone. Yeah. Grind to get a lot of dough and dirt through all the obstacles, cause anything is possible. Yeah. Oh man, I got a lot of goals. Stack that bread and vomit my nose. Anything is possible.
Asante Sana for staying with me. It's Alma Robin. I hope that you did a little breathing. I did. And I'm ready to get back to discussing our experience of chaos in white spaces. Okay, so in the last one, I did mention this scenario. It was a hypothetical scenario, but I promise that I have actually lived that scenario many times. And I know I'm not the only one. But that's not the only example either. You know, this chaos also appears in department stores. You know, when you notice that the staff or the security are watching you closely or following you closely. I've noticed that many times. That's what we call shopping while black. Then there's also the chaos that's at the bank when you go to deposit a check and the teller is suspicious of that check, thinking that it's fake, and then calls the police. That's called banking while black. And that one I just read about too last week, that this happened to a kid who had worked for a $900 check and was deposited, and they actually handcuffed him in the store. In the bank. Unbelievable, but true. Then of course there's the chaos when you're driving by yourself and you're followed by the police, and that can go in many different directions. And sadly, we've seen how that could go in a lethal direction. But even if it doesn't, you know, just being followed. I know when I've been followed, and I have been many times, my heart is racing. You know, my palms get sweaty. I start to get really nervous until maybe the cop turns away or something like that. But I never know. My breathing gets shallow. It's terrible. And that is chaos. And that's called driving while black. And that's just the most minor part of it. As we know, it can and has gone in lethal directions. And these are all true examples of the chaos. The chaos can appear in different ways too, and they're kind of bits and pieces or parts of some of these other scenarios, but I want to highlight them because they're real. It can appear as microaggressions. For those of you that aren't clear about it, microaggressions are the subtle and everyday acts of racism that are, directed towards you, and they can undermine one's self-esteem, really create a hostile environment, certainly an environment of chaos. Some examples: the coworker who constantly mispronounces your name, or the store clerk who follows you around in the store, assuming you're there to steal. Those are seemingly harmless comments and actions that can really leave lasting scars. I can say that personally because there are some stores that I won't even shop in anymore, because I know that whenever I go, all of a sudden there is a security guard almost right next to me. He probably wonders, wow, things have been stolen here. How did she do it? Because he's sitting there watching me while the rest of the store is being, a lot of shoplifting's happening in other parts of the store. So let's see. It doesn't stop there, though. The chaos appears as tokenism. People say that, wow, you're the first to do this. You're at the very top. In many ways, that's fantastic. But in many ways, it's a difficult place to be in. When we're the only black person in a professional or a social setting, it can be stressful. And many people don't think about it. I know I've been the only black person in the room, sometimes in a very large room full of people. And it's uncomfortable. And you carry the weight. You feel like you're carrying the weight of representing all black people, and that you're pressured to speak on behalf of all black people while struggling to find my own voice, or just struggling to just be me, just be a human. and not always be, well, she's a black person, I can ask her what it's like. It's lonely and it's an isolating experience, and one that can leave us feeling like we're always walking on eggshells and afraid to make a misstep. Just like I was saying in that previous hypothetical scenario, afraid to grab the wrong fork or to hold the wine glass the wrong way. And of course, we can't forget about the chaos of cultural appropriation, the theft of our culture and our traditions without acknowledgement or respect for their origins. It's all to them just window dressing. It's just a hairstyle, or it's just a shirt where it's just dashiki, or it's just shells I'm wearing, where instead they're cowrie shells, or it's just jazz. I can talk over that because it's just background music. It's not that. And I am very opposed to people talking over jazz anyway. That's just rude. And it's seeing our hairstyles and our music and our fashion being co-opted by white people, I'm just going to say it, and stripped of their cultural significance and then commodified for a profit. Wow, that's just capitalism in action, raw capitalism in action. And it's a painful reminder that our identities are up for grabs. They're for sale. They're commodified and sold to the highest bidder. And where have you heard about that before? I'm not even going to go there right now. Racial profiling adds another layer to the chaos. As we're targeted and surveilled by authorities or by our fellow citizens based on racial stereotypes, really based on our race. Sometimes we're out there having a barbecue and white people feel uncomfortable. Wow, gee, why are they doing that there? Or they're saying that we're talking too loud, or, that we're, wearing certain clothes, or just our very presence can make them uncomfortable because they have profiled us. And it's the constant fear of being stopped by the police for no reason, followed around a store, as I've said before, both of these, because we fit the description. I'm saying in quotes. And the description is black person. And it's the never-ending cycle of suspicion and distrust that leaves us feeling like we're always on edge and never truly safe in our own skin. This could be a good time to take a breath like I just did, but I think we're gonna push through a little bit longer. The chaos appears as unequal treatment. Black people are consistently being passed over for promotions or raises despite having equal or sometimes superior qualifications. And our performance evaluations are sometimes they mess those up, just to make their white counterparts look better. It was the black student receiving a harsher disciplinary action at school for the same behavior that goes unpunished for white students. Have you heard about like the six-year-old now, who had a meltdown at school, which is what 6-year-olds do, and they actually called the police. This is a black student here we're talking about, and they handcuffed that child. That just doesn't happen to white students. But that is we've talked about this before, the adultification of black students and black kids. There's also the black patients receiving lower quality health care or facing longer waiting times in medical settings compared to white patients. I really jump on this frequently because I've gone to emergency rooms, and I know that there's different ways that they have to take people, but I've seen that I've been waiting, and I've seen white people come in and get taken and leave before I even get seen. And I complain about that. And I complain about that on behalf of other black patients there too. This one you might not think about. The chaos can appear as gaslighting. It's experiencing racism in the workplace or a social setting and having others deny or minimize your experiences, suggesting that you're overreacting or being too sensitive. What kind of arrogance is that to tell somebody else that knows nothing about racism that you're overreacting, or that you're being too sensitive, but that it really didn't happen. That's just pure arrogance. But they also call it gaslighting. It's being told by your white peers that they don't see color or that racism really doesn't exist anymore, despite your lived experiences proving otherwise. I mean, that's at best ignorance, at worst, not even at worst, but it's absolutely arrogance too. And it's having your experiences of discrimination dismissed by colleagues, by supervisors, even by friends, which really can leave us feeling frustrated and isolated. But perhaps, the most insidious form of chaos is the internal struggle, is the internal racism, the imposter syndrome that whispers in our ears telling us that we don't belong. It's the feeling of inadequacy that gnaws away at us and is fueled by systemic barriers and a lack of representation. It's the fear that we will never measure up, no matter how hard we try. And we know that we try, and we work very, very, very hard. But the point isn't about being competent. It's about, controlling and limiting what Black people, can do and what's available to us. This is the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces. And I can tell from my own breath that it is time for one more breather break. And then we're going to wind it down. I got some information I think you're going to want to know. We're going to talk about why it's important to discuss this chaos of living Black in white spaces. You're probably wondering, why is this important? Why is she talking about this? We're going to go into that in this next section, this last section. But I'm going to take a minute to breathe, and then I will be back. And I hope that y'all are ready for this. Thanks so much for staying in the building with me, fam. I know this is some difficult stuff, so I'm glad that we're here together to deal with it. By the way, you can find more information on this topic at the Espresso Talk Today website at espressotalktoday.com. It's all there for you in the Power Blog section. So don't feel like you need to scramble and write stuff down or keep repeating stuff, because it's all there. So, why is it important for us to talk about the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces? Because knowledge is power, my friends. By shining a light on the chaos of living Black in white spaces, by calling it out, we empower ourselves to name our experiences, to confront the systemic injustice, and to demand change. And to know that this structure and this system need to go. I'm talking about dismantling all of it. There's no reason why we should be living in a world of chaos like this. It's also important to recognize this chaos because it causes stress, it causes anxiety, it causes depression, hypertension, heart disease, and other chronic illnesses. And these are shortening our lives and reducing our well-being. We deserve better for ourselves and for our family. I've discussed these before, racial battle fatigue, John Henryism, and other health problems that are caused by the stress of racism, and they are real. The chaos, its unpredictability, its lack of logic, its lack of control, is a real part of the Black experience in white spaces. And I'm going to step aside here and give this special note to our allies. And first of all, we really appreciate our allies, really appreciate you. But this is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that your silence is complicity. And your solidarity is needed now more than ever. Your courage is needed. We need you to speak up when you see injustice. Speak up to us, but speak up to them. Speak up to the people who are committing these things. It's easy to talk to us about it, because you're kind of preaching to the choir. But it takes more courage, and it's more difficult, but it's more important and essential for you to call out the injustice, the racism, the microaggressions, the insensitivity. When you see someone else doing it, to call it out to them, at them. They need to listen. Okay, they need to hear what you have to say. Especially when we're talking about these issues, we need you. We need our allies to be present and to bear witness to the oppression and the injustice that is foundational to American society. We need you to recognize your unearned privilege in this chaos, as well as the undeserved inferiority that Black people are given in white spaces. We need you, our allies. We need you, but we need you in a certain way. And please, just listen to us and call out the people who are doing it. We are all living in this chaos. It's felt and it's recognized by Black people. White people are living in it too, but you may see it and feel it less acutely, perhaps not at all. So this is the answer that we started all of this with. What do I mean by the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces? I went through a lot of these examples and scenarios, but it all boils down to one thing: racism. This is racism. This is living Black in a white supremacist society. The societal structures are built on white supremacy. The systems that support these are the systems that are supporting white supremacy and supporting the inferiority of Blackness. These are the interpersonal experiences of racism and the internalization of racism, of racist thought and beliefs. It's all racism. It's all the chaos. And this chaos is racism. And it might be scary, I understand. It might be scary to realize that you've been living in chaos. That actually there's been a tornado all around you and you haven't felt it. Or it might simply just describe the world that you've always lived in and that you've always known it. But it is time to confront it. And that's the mission of Espresso Talk today. That's why we are Black Empowerment and a Black Liberation podcast. And our mission really is to liberate ourselves from the chaos. That's the ultimate goal, liberation. So, liberation. We've always got to keep our eyes on that, because we can empower ourselves within these racist structures, or we can aim at getting rid of the racist structures themselves. That is enough for today, my fam. But this is far from over, and I will never stop until liberation is real. So, I do want us to continue this conversation some other time. Let's share our stories, let's uplift each other, and let's demand the justice and equality that we deserve. Because together we really can create a world where the chaos of living Black in a predominantly white space is nothing more than a distant memory. We're going to look back and say, God, we're not living with that chaos anymore. Asante Sana for being part of the Espresso Talk Today community. This has been a difficult but important and, I think, interesting and uplifting discussion today. Yes, I know, the chaos of living Black in predominantly white spaces is not easy to talk about or even to bring up. But I told you, here at Espresso Talk Today, we have uncommon conversations, and we're going to keep them that way, because we want to make sure that we talk about the things that we really need to talk about, to say the things that really need to be said. That's what courage is. It's not avoiding topics that are hard, It's confronting them even though they are hard. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And remember this. Black people, we are not the problem. We are not the problem. We are not causing the chaos. We are not the chaos. We're not creating the problem. The problem is and always has been white supremacy. The problem is the white supremacist patriarchal system that's attacking black bodies, black minds, and black hearts. That's really what's causing the problem, and I'm calling it chaos because that's what it feels like to me. I really like to know what it feels like to you, but it really feels like chaos when I'm stepping out and then all of a sudden things go crazy. They're unpredictable and, they're scary and they're illogical, and that to me is chaos. But I know that it is racism, and I hope you know that now too. So remember, as we wrap up, my fellow warriors, know this deep in your soul. You are powerful beyond measure, and together we are invincible. And the problem, the real scourge on society, is white supremacy. You are not the problem. I know you're probably wondering, why does she keep saying that? Because we've been told all along for so many years that we are the problem. Remember, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote a whole essay on how does it feel to be a problem? If you haven't read that, I just really highly recommend it, because it's not how does it feel to have a problem? It's how does it feel to be a problem? I don't know, because I'm not one, and neither are you. Okay, back to, I know we're wrapping this up, and I'll get back to that because this is running on. But if you want to keep discussing or just reading about these issues, then I would definitely recommend subscribing to my weekly Black Empowerment newsletter, The No More Beat. We discuss lots of different issues there, and you can get your dose of Black empowerment every single week. There's never a dull moment, but there are lots and lots and lots of uplifting moments and liberating moments too. You can subscribe at the Espresso Talk Today website, espressotalktoday.com, or on Instagram at Robin. You can also find us on Facebook in our newly opened Espresso Talk Today Black Liberation Lounge. This group is a safe space for us to hold discussions, share thoughts and ideas, feel joy, express sadness, or just be. And this is a chaos-free zone. You can also join us on Instagram to discuss these issues at Robin L. That's Ama, AMA, _Robin, the letter L. I'm Ama Robin for Espresso Talk Today. And remember, now more than ever, strength, soul, and reparations. Ashe, fam.